Welcome to Inside Games, the only gaming news show brave enough to regret selling Activision Blizzard stock. By the way, I'll never regret that because Bobby Kotick's there.
Bruce, you made a very principled decision, and clearly you're paying for it in sunny Hawaii right now. Yeah, unfortunately, we had one shot with our HelloFresh money, and I gotta admit, we blew it. We blew it bad on hiring a dance troupe for today's episode. I mean, even if we didn't make $1 billion this week, we can at least rest easy that some white dude got a little richer.
So that's basically every other day, right?
Oh, no. This one's different, because now... There's bad fallout this time, unlike every other time a white dude gets richer. Now Call of Duty might never come to a PlayStation console ever again, Bruce!
The money shockwaves will ripple far and wide soon as Microsoft announced a deal to acquire games publisher and developer Activision Blizzard for $68.7 billion.
This is a huge deal, obviously, with tons of lingering questions, and there's lots to talk about and cover.
That's right, but talking about games is what we do here. It's even when we're on vacation. So let's dig into it. First, we're going to cover the actual news beats and examine Microsoft's previous acquisitions to see kind of what we can expect going forward.
Will Kotick be tossed out on his ass by head ex-bro Phil Spencer? Is Call of Duty now Xbox exclusive? And finally, most importantly, will Master Chief finally be playable in Guitar Hero? All of these questions and more will be answered in this massive, mega, ultra, super news explosion spectacular.
That's right, we got a real dummy thick episode for you guys to commemorate the occasion. How about a little song and dance number from the Xbox dancers?
Bring him out!
Are they over here, or?
Oh, hold on, a little... All right, they all have COVID, no dancers.
Microsoft announced the news on Tuesday, January 18th, sending console warriors across the internet scrambling to their trenches to make sense of this messy new video game landscape.
Yeah, some of that discourse has been spicy. It's been fun watching the forums, man. People are going for the jugular. People insisting that this makes Sony even better somehow. It's great. And while the warriors battle as usual, the kings celebrate and feast. Microsoft will acquire Activision Blizzard for $95 per share, in an all-cash transaction valued at $68.7 billion, inclusive of Activision Blizzard's net cash. They're buying their cash. That makes this Microsoft's biggest acquisition ever as a company, vaulting over the $26 billion they paid for LinkedIn back in 2016.
The press release also confirms that Activision Blizzard CEO Bobby Kotick, who was recently exposed to have knowingly withheld incidents of sexual abuse and rape from the company's board by the Wall Street Journal, will continue to serve as CEO of Activision Blizzard, and he and his team will maintain their focus on driving efforts to further strengthen the company's culture and accelerate business growth.
Yeah, that's a pretty bitter pill to swallow, but all indicators kind of point to the fact he'll leave as soon as the merger's complete, which makes sense. That's usually what CEOs do. But we'll have more on all that after we cover the broad strokes of Microsoft's acquisition.
This deal also accompanies a bit of executive restructuring at Xbox. Previous Xbox division lead Phil Spencer is now the CEO of Microsoft Gaming. Activision Blizzard CEO Bobby Kotick and his executive team will report to Spencer as the deal is executed.
And that's not going to happen very soon. The press release says, quote, the deal is expected to close in fiscal year 2023. But Microsoft fiscal years run from July to June, so that puts the full execution between July 2023 and June 2024. That's a year and a half away minimum.
Last news bit from the press release here, Microsoft now has 25 million active Game Pass subscribers, which is up from the 18 million they announced last January and amounts to about 38% growth year over year, which is great.
And with this acquisition, clearly that number is going to continue growing. Microsoft Gaming CEO Phil Spencer announced directly that, quote, we will offer as many Activision Blizzard games as we can within Xbox Game Pass and PC Game Pass, both new titles and games from Activision Blizzard's incredible catalog, end quote. And that's from a post further discussing the acquisition on Xbox Wire.
Yeah, the caveat is that these additions will happen upon close of the acquisition, meaning you have some time to clear space on your Xbox for all that Guitar Hero Van Halen DLC you'll be downloaded. Woo! I can't wait to get that game again, huh?
Spencer also lightly addressed concerns about possible corporate reorganizations and layoffs, in addition to the aforementioned controversies at Activision Blizzard, in saying, quote, we deeply value individual studio cultures. We also believe that creative success and autonomy go hand in hand with treating every person with dignity and respect. We hold all teams and all leaders to this commitment. We're looking forward to extending our culture of proactive inclusion to the great teams across Activision Blizzard.
I'm going to be honest here, Lawrence. I trust Phil Spencer a lot more than I trust a lot of other CEOs, so I'm glad to hear him say it. So it all sounds great, because according to recent news, Activision Blizzard really could use all the proactive inclusion they can get.
Yeah, they're kind of lacking on that front and have been for a long time. So that whole mess, and it's very tragic and very sad. It is a bit too complicated to recap in the context of this story, because this story is already very long. You can watch our coverage of that ongoing saga if you want the full story. We got all of our sources and links in the description down there. Essentially, both the federal and state watchdog agencies found Activision Blizzard guilty of systemically suppressing female coworkers, while the Wall Street Journal report revealed that ABK CEO Bobby Kotick knowingly suppressed information detailing just how widespread the issue actually was.
And before you wonder, yes, the scandal outbreak absolutely contributed to Activision Blizzard's acquisition, according to a Bloomberg report on the same day as the acquisition announcement.
Yeah, this is wild. Citing, quote, a person familiar with the matter, as these reports tend to do, Microsoft senior executives urged then Xbox head Phil Spencer to establish communication with Bobby Kotick after the controversy surfaced. That communication had two purposes. First, to, quote, make it clear that Microsoft had concerns about the treatment of women at Activision. And second, to, quote, ensure that if Kotick and the board were willing to sell the company, Microsoft would be well positioned to make an offer.
As acquisition discussions evolved, Activision reached out to other companies, including Facebook owner Meta, but obviously those talks just didn't reach acceptable terms for both parties.
The Bloomberg report also specifies that Xbox daddy Phil Spencer personally engaged in the bulk of the merger talks, with only occasional involvement from Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella. This is a pretty big fish for Spencer to land. That's kind of an understatement anyway. And this is in addition to his negotiating the acquisitions of both Minecraft in 2014 and ZeniMax Media, aka Bethesda, in 2020.
Now Spencer is the CEO of Microsoft Gaming, reporting directly to Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella. So pretty astounding run for someone who joined Microsoft as an intern in 1988. That's huge, Phil. This is huge. Honestly, it's amazing. Legend has it that if you eat one single strand of Phil Spencer's hair, you'll instantly get a million gamer score.
I gotta snatch some of that next E3. If I see him walking in the hallways, I'm coming for it.
This is savvy business timing on a number of levels, really. Microsoft now has a ton of leverage in moving huge properties like Call of Duty to Game Pass. More on that in a second. And Activision Blizzard executives and investors all get a giant chunk of money in addition to a narrative reboot for the embattled company.
Activision Blizzard CEO Bobby Kotick outlined his own motivations for pursuing the acquisition in an interview with GamesBeat on January 18th. According to Kotick, with competitors like Tencent, NetEase, Google, and Amazon entering the games space, he felt that Activision Blizzard didn't currently have the talent in AI or machine learning fields to directly compete with those giant companies.
Yeah, here's a quote. You got NVIDIA and all those big companies recruiting the best AI and computer graphics talent. And so we realized the pipeline for talent, we just didn't have it. And we needed to have access to somebody's pipeline of talent. And that was a big consideration. That's what Bobby Kotick said.
Yeah, he also, this is when it gets a little uncomfortably business, a little Bobby, basically. He kind of minimized the impact that the sexual harassment scandal had on this entire process, at least in regards to the company's stock price and thus its acquisition value. From his perspective, delaying Overwatch and Diablo caused a bigger hit to the stock price, and he's kind of right. And that, quote, stocks go up and down all the time for a variety of reasons.
Whatever. Unsurprisingly, at the end of the day, money did the loudest talking, as it always does. Kotick says that Microsoft, quote, made this offer that was incredibly attractive at a 45% premium over the stock price. And it just made a lot of sense.
Yeah. Dollars and cents.
Although that doesn't mean Microsoft is getting Activision Blizzard for a song. Wall Street Journal reporter Dan Gallagher notes that Microsoft is, quote, picking up a battered game publisher at its pre-battered price in this deal, noting that the $95 share price for Activision is 45% above the stock's previous close, but only 4% above its level from mid-July of last year, where the state of California sued the company over an alleged pattern of gender discrimination.
Despite being embroiled in some serious shit, everyone at Activision Blizzard is getting top dollar for their shares. Hooray! And from the sounds of it, of course, that also includes Activision Blizzard CEO Bobby Kotick. Ooh, fucking Ray to that one too.
.LA ran the math, and according to Activision's public disclosures, Kotick would be due as much as $293 million in compensation in the event that he is terminated following a change in the company's ownership. That sum includes up to $4.4 million in severance pay, $17.4 million in severance bonuses, and $271 million in equity awards. He would also likely be paid out for the roughly $3.9 million Activision shares he owns, which would net him more than $370 million, given Microsoft's $95 per share acquisition offer.
There's some concern, a little bit of concern, about providing somebody who has been accused of actively suppressing sexual assault for decades a new yacht, or how many yachts is that actually?
That's a lot of yachts. I mean, that's like a lot. We want to say 200 yachts, bro.
Just because I had a spare 5 minutes, I looked it up. Galati Yachts says that yachts can cost as much as $10 million apparently. So if you add it up, that's 66.3 yachts. But those are the nice ones. Those are the really nice ones. Those are the Lux yachts.
We don't mean to make light of this, by the way. We don't like Bobby Kotick just as much as everybody else. So make sure we're all aware he should have been fired a long time ago. In a statement to Axios, the SOC investment group executive Dieter Weizenegger wonders, quote, what are the accountability mechanisms for his years of leadership of the company? And that, quote, I think that needs to be linked to any golden parachute.
.LA then observes that SOC, quote, owns less than 1% of Activision Blizzard, and in arranging a deal that will reward Activision shareholders handsomely, it appears that Kotick is set to depart the company on his own terms as a very wealthy man, regardless of the damaging, undignified nature of the latter years of his reign.
At the very least, all reports indicate Kotick intends to leave his position once the acquisition is complete, according to several outlets.
Yeah, the Wall Street Journal cites people familiar with the plans, and saying that Bobby Kotick is expected to leave after the deal closes. Also, Axios taps an anonymous source in saying that Kotick is not expected to remain with the company once the deal closes. So that's two.
Two more details tumble out of an Activision Blizzard all-hands fireside chat on January 20th, as reported by the Washington Post. In it, Kotick said, quote, my commitment to the company is to remain in my role. Once the deal closes, what I've committed to Microsoft is I will stay as long as is necessary to ensure that we have a great integration and a great transition.
Yeah, cool. That's pretty vague, though. And if we translate it from CEO talk, it means he'll be peeling out of his personal parking space in a new Ferrari as soon as the ink is dry, probably.
Or peeling out in a new yacht. Maybe one of those new yachts. Kotick certainly sounds like he's already on leg time. Apparently, the fireside chat only lasted 16 minutes, despite being scheduled for 30. And Kotick was 7 minutes late and wrapped up the conversation early, saying he believed completing the deal with Microsoft would be a great journey. Clearly does not. He wants out because now everyone knows he's a piece of shit. And they want to make sure nobody wants to see his face anymore, and he knows it.
And he's lame duck. Like, he knows that he's not the shot caller anymore. He's just there to kind of ease the transition, get his check, and get out the door.
This treatment that obviously did not go over well with Activision Blizzard employees.
Yeah, an anonymous employee told the Washington Post that, quote, all the fear and anger felt is still tied up in Bobby Kotick and what harm he will inflict until the torch is passed to Microsoft. With no mention of the strike, the lawsuit, or any of the continuing issues, there may as well not been a Q&A at all. We could have read a press release and slept an extra 15 minutes.
Other employees were more direct and public in announcing their displeasure. Overwatch producer Tracy Kennedy posted on Twitter about, quote, the random projects for OW1, which is Overwatch 1, you all would shove on us. A team would do OT or overtime for only them to get canceled. And for months of OW2, Overwatch 2 dev, to have been lost. Or how almost entire teams are turning over and citing you as the reason. Kennedy goes on to accuse Kotick of hiding, quote, behind scapegoats because you're a coward, and calls him, quote, a gritty joke, which, hey, totally fine with that. Get him, Tracy. Get him.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious at this point Kotick doesn't have a lot of friends in the rank and file at Activision Blizzard. Worker advocacy group A Better ABK restated that many of their original demands were not met or even addressed, including the removal of Bobby Kotick as CEO. At this rate, though, that seems unlikely until the acquisition is fully complete and he gets paid hundreds of millions of dollars.
All right, Lawrence, did we get through all the news there or what?
I think so. I think that's it. That's the news. That's all the info just over the past 2 days that has fallen out of all this. So,
well, hey, congratulations to us. Let's bring out those Xbox dancers one more time. That's right, they're sick.
So if we move on from the meat and potatoes of the news, obviously this means Microsoft now owns tons of video game intellectual property and development studios that will now produce content for Xbox Game Pass.
Yeah, this is the better part of the story. In addition to Blizzard Entertainment, Microsoft Game Studios will also include Treyarch, Raven, High Moon, Beanox, Sledgehammer, Infinity Ward, Demonware, and Toys for Bob.
It's pretty wild. As far as intellectual property goes, we don't know the exact ownership of anything, since it's not really a matter of public record. But here's a list of games that have been developed internally at Activision Blizzard. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, Guitar Hero, DJ Hero, Singularity, Prototype, Spyro and Skylanders, Crash Bandicoot, Hexen, apparently, and every Blizzard Entertainment property, including Diablo, Warcraft, StarCraft, and Overwatch.
Yeah, there's tons more, to be honest. Activision's worked on hundreds of properties over its 42 years in games development and publishing. Who knows what dusty video game skeletons Phil Spencer might reanimate to sing and dance for you. That is, if you game on a platform that supports Xbox Game Pass. So you got an Xbox, you got a PC.
Yeah, that's the big lingering question right now. Will huge Activision properties like Call of Duty still publish on PlayStation platforms once this deal is done?
The answer is yes. But for now, yes, they will.
As reported by the Wall Street Journal, A Sony spokesman said, quote, "We expect that Microsoft will abide by contractual agreements and continue to ensure Activision games are multi-platform."
We've seen this situation before, specifically when Microsoft acquired Obsidian Entertainment just before Obsidian shipped The Outer Worlds. Since publishing contracts were already signed, that game released on PlayStation platforms despite technically being owned by Microsoft at the time. Unsurprisingly, the sequel to that game is only coming to Xbox and PC.
So just as then, Microsoft will honor existing contracts executed between Activision Blizzard King and Sony. I mean, they could break the contract, but then they'd have to pay damages according to whatever that contract lists, and at that scale, the damages are probably insane and don't justify the cost of breaking the contract. So for Microsoft, it's far cheaper and easier to just execute the paperwork as it's been written.
That's right, and also they would have a terrible, like a public relations nightmare if they did that, because a lot of people would be really, really angry, in addition to breaking contracts. So that said, we have no idea what's under publishing contract already and what is not. Overwatch 2, Diablo 4, next year's Call of Duty, 2023 Call of Duty. Activision doesn't have any announced but unreleased titles at this time. So it's kind of hard to put together a picture of what the next 3 to 4 years might actually look like.
One way or the other, though, this is wild. The value of a PlayStation 5 did just kind of drop a little bit. Unless they all stay multi-platform, and it's really hard to see everything staying multi-platform. Sony's platform already wasn't getting Starfield or Elder Scrolls 6. All of Bethesda's software is now off of it. And now potentially, in a few years, that means no Call of Duty, nothing from Blizzard, including Overwatch, nothing from Activision at all. That said, there is a ray of hope. It seems dealmaker extraordinaire Phil Spencer is on the case yet again.
Spencer tweeted seemingly hopeful, but ultimately ambiguous news on January 20th, saying that he, quote, "had good calls this week with leaders at Sony. I confirmed our intent to honor all existing agreements upon acquisition of Activision Blizzard and our desire to keep Call of Duty on PlayStation. Sony is an important part of our industry, and we value our relationship."
It's a nice message, very diplomatic and certainly very hopeful, but that wording really could mean anything. Of course, Xbox wants their games on as many platforms as possible. We just don't know what those stakes are.
Yeah, it's not too hard to guess, though, here. Spencer has never really been shy about the purpose of acquiring game studios or the end goal of it. It's always Game Pass. He said as much back when Microsoft acquired Bethesda in March of 2021.
So obviously, I can't sit here and say every Bethesda game is exclusive, because we know that's not true. There's contractual obligations that we're going to see through, as we always do in every one of these instances. We have games that exist on other platforms, and we're going to go support those games on the platforms they're on. There's communities of players. We love those communities, and we'll continue to invest in them. And even in the future, there might be things that have either contractual things or legacy on different platforms that we'll go do. But if we're an Xbox customer, the thing I want you to know is this is about delivering great exclusive games for you that ship on platforms where Game Pass exists. And that's our goal. That's why we're doing this. That's the root of this partnership that we're building.
So if Spencer's ultimate goal is to put Xbox Game Pass games on platforms where Game Pass exists, maybe that's it. Maybe Spencer's trying to get Xbox Game Pass on PlayStation.
Makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. I love it. The likelihood of that seems very, very low, especially considering Sony is rumored to be preparing their own gaming subscription service. But Sony has found ways to play ball when their bottom line is insured. PlayStation's arrangement with Epic Games to allow Fortnite crossplay is a good example of that.
Based on that, there is evidence of PlayStation opening the gate to their walled garden when it's in their interests. So it's possible that Spencer can get in there and work wonders, and Microsoft certainly seems willing to aim the fire hose of money at problems these days. Maybe it could function as an add-on purchase to Sony's own PlayStation Plus or their subscription service when they launch one, or if they launch one. That way, Sony would get paid first and foremost on their platforms, with the opportunity of more add-on revenue for Sony if people decide to go with third party. Maybe.
Either way, remember, this acquisition won't fully execute before July 2023 at the earliest, and June 2024 at the latest. By that point, we'll be well into this console generation already in the gaming landscape, and the way you access these libraries of games held by entertainment companies could all be very, very different. That's 2 years in the future. So,
but I mean, on that note, about thinking about the future, it sure does feel like a lot of big game franchises are all collecting into fewer and fewer companies. And some people have been asking this: is it possible Microsoft is tripping over the monopoly or antitrust line here?
As far as we can tell, no. At least not yet. And also, I feel like Microsoft would have done their due diligence with the government and been like, hey, we're going to do this thing. What do you think? And they, maybe got a few like nods and they're like, that's okay.
In this circumstance, though, to have a full monopoly, as far as we can tell, we're not lawyers or anything, but yeah, Microsoft would have to provide the only hardware that plays the games. And right now, many people provide PC hardware. They'd have to be the only vendor that sells you the games, and they'd also have to prevent any other stores or competition from running on their platforms.
Yeah, right now Windows is host to many different game stores, and while they might not all have the exact same games, they can at least compete with each other in pricing and offerings. Additionally, you can still buy digital codes for Xbox games from retailers, meaning Microsoft can't completely control game pricing either. And this is the funny part, Sony is actually closer to the definition of having a monopoly, given that they sell the hardware and control all digital pricing for their games.
Yeah, that's pretty weird. I mean, to Sony's credit, they are publishing on PC now, so there is at least a little competition in terms of platform. But yeah, they've gone to lengths to make sure that they control their money flow. That said, there have been way more acquisitions and mergers in gaming in the last few years, so if you're thinking that, you're not really crazy for noting that the industry really is consolidating.
Yeah, there's a wave of mergers going on. The Wall Street Journal points out that, quote, spending on mergers and acquisitions nearly tripled to $26.2 billion in 2021 from $8.9 billion in 2020. That's data from the PitchBook show. And venture capital deals nearly doubled to a record $11.2 billion from $6.4 billion, according to the private market data firm.
But as far as you and I are concerned, and anyone else watching this video, that's another universe. It drives what happens, but what does this mean for us, for Joe, Q, every gamer?
The obvious answer is that Game Pass is going to get tons of existing games, in addition to a library of legacy IP that, from the sounds of it, Phil Spencer's just itching to revive. What does he love the most other than Battletoads?
So Spencer actually talked about some of the legacy IP in an interview with the Washington Post, saying, quote, I was looking at the IP list. I mean, let's go! King's Quest, Guitar Hero? I should know this, but I think they got Hexen. He goes on to say, we're hoping that we'll be able to work with them when the deal closes to make sure we have resources to work on franchises that I love from my childhood and that the teams really want to get. I'm looking forward to these conversations. I really think it's about adding resources and increasing capability.
It's possible that under Xbox Game Studios, the dev teams that were largely relegated to support roles on larger titles, studios like Beanox, Toys for Bob, even Raven Software a little bit, could move to producing new games from these legacy IP.
Yeah, and it's also likely that a lot of the developers at those studios are at the age where they did play those IP growing up. So you're going to have a huge generational wraparound of everyone really excited to work on the property that they grew up playing, kind of like Spencer's talking about.
They wouldn't have to be AAA in scope either. Reliable developers could produce new games from nostalgic series every 2 years to give Game Pass a steady stream of boomer bait to encourage signups. Imagine if Netflix acquired Warner and they made series out of all of their movie properties, hitting just week after week after week. That's probably what we'll get a few years from now. Sounds like a sweet deal, provided you have a platform that supports Game Pass, like an Xbox or a PC. Finally, this whole deal does imply brighter days ahead for the studio that kicked all this mess off, Blizzard Entertainment.
As we said before, Kodak's comments in his fireside chat made it sound like layoffs aren't imminent, which is very good news, promising that, quote, the transition is going to be smooth because Microsoft is committed to trying to retain as many of our people as possible. But pending layoffs or imminent layoffs, if they did happen, doesn't include people who voluntarily left already, found better positions, or were pushed out by internal audits following these sexual abuse reports.
Yeah, just one day before Microsoft announced the merger, the Wall Street Journal reported that, quote, Activision Blizzard Inc. has fired or pushed out more than 36 employees and disciplined about 40 others since July. So house cleaning was already under full swing before this acquisition went through.
Yeah, so when it comes to Blizzard Entertainment, it's possible that with over 36 problem employees tossed out and even more than that disciplined, the employees that have toughed it out in this unfortunate period can look forward to very bright days ahead. One does have to wonder what Microsoft is going to do about redundancies on the publishing side, though. Not to mention Blizzard's esports investments like Major League Gaming. Microsoft has that now. I don't know what they're going to do with it, but maybe Blizzard Entertainment will ship properties again someday. Well, that would be great. Get some games from Blizzard. And potentially Blizzard Entertainment properties will be available for other Microsoft game studios to take on, which is even cooler. That's very cool. If Blizzard can't be bothered to make StarCraft anymore, that's fine. Just give it to somebody else, please.
Or, hear me out, now every game is Candy Crush.
Ooh, now you're talking. Hey, Bruce, you know what? Let's bring out the Candy Crush dancers!
Lawrence, they got COVID, man. They got COVID.
Oh, we shouldn't have put them in the same room!
What were we thinking?